Cemetery man. I love cemeteries. I like the old cemeteries. They're all important to us. But as Lee said, I'm kind of one man now, but we'll go through that later. I'm from Alabama, okay? Actually born north of Cloverdale, about 3 miles, 1 mile south of Cypress Inn.
The cultural center of the universe.
Absolutely, but in Alabama, before you got to that line, on my mother and dad's farm. And my older brother back there was born before I was, okay? And he was born there under the big oak tree like we were, okay? And a little bit about what I used to do before I stopped work. I didn't want to stop work, you know. I worked until I was 75, and I thought it's time to come home and live with my wife and dogs again. So I did that 6 years ago. So anyway, I worked for Bechtel. We did design, build, construct, start up and operate power stations, refineries, chemical plants, railroads, ports, airports, all these things, okay? And I love my work, but I thought I should come home. And I was hoping some of the other guys in our group would be here. And I want to thank them. And I mentioned you, Lee, right here.
I'll pay you later.
Yeah, I know. I hope so. And because Steve Woods, Jimmy Woods, they were from Waterloo. And I knew when we got down past Oakland, I knew nothing about that area, okay? I've only been down there 4 or 5 times in my life. I was always going this way or overseas or someplace. But it was Steve and Jimmy, Kenneth Murphy's Oakland. Kenneth was going to try to be here. Mike Norman, Mike gave up. He moved to Michigan with some younger people. He was the youngest member of our group. He was like 45, okay? But he was strong, okay? And David Ponder, he was going to be here. He was my buddy from church, but he's not well today. Steve Cooper, who a lot of us know, passed away 2 months ago. Steve was great. He had a lot of information. And Joe Meyer, Walden Victory, he lived at Petersville now. He was my closest neighbor who lived on the farm at Cloverdale. James Dixon, he was going to be here, but he had to go to Arkansas to meet some cousins. He's the historian, one of the researchers in Waynesboro in the courthouse. In the past, I went up there 2 days a week to work with them, help them. But they work a little bit slower than I like to work, okay? So I said, no, James, I'm going back to Lauderdale County, try to finish it, okay? Edgar G. Ballard III, cousin Edgar, right there. He's got so much information. He's from the Collingwood area. His family had a publishing company. Then he eventually relocated to the Promised Land in Florence, okay? But he is overloaded with information, okay? Good guy. And he says we're related, and I'm pretty sure we are. Okay. This one here. How I got started into this cemetery thing. Family research, genealogy, okay? I didn't get interested in that until about 12, 13 years ago. But when we were growing up, my mother wrote a lot, our mother. I didn't know why she did that. Well, she was a school teacher in her younger years in Wayne County, but she wrote a lot. And I didn't get interested in that. Well, when she passed away, I got a lot of her notes, okay? That got me started. So once you get into genealogy, that you want to go find the grave sites, families are buried. So that's how I got into it, okay? In genealogy, most of you know, if you're into that, it never ends unless you want it to end, okay? And it's still going. So that's how I got into the cemetery stuff, okay? And as I said earlier, all cemeteries are important to us, especially those old ones. We found so many single graves, 2 graves, out in pastures, under the bushes. Some of them have been so bad we literally have to cut our way into them. A property owner or a relative would say, yeah, it's over there somewhere. So give us some directions. That's the best they could do it. We literally had to cut our way into many, many of these. And we think it's very important to find these, okay? And but it's just really important. We find them everywhere. And when we tell people, so where are they? They're everywhere. You know, we tell them, and we think there's about 420 or so in the county, Lauderdale County only. And I've been to 378. Now, there's some big ones, although they're important. Greenview, Florence City Cemetery, all the big ones. Wesley's Chapel, where my parents are buried. I don't survey those that go to there because they're so easy to find. It's easy to access, and you know you don't really need a lot of help there. And like Florence City Cemetery, there are like 9,000 grave sites there. And people will say, "I didn't realize that," and but they are. They're just everywhere. Sometimes they'll say, "Why do you do this?" And I'll say, Look, you see that grave? That was a real person one time. That was someone's family member. You and I are going to be there soon. That's why it's important to me, okay? And as we're traipsing around through the pastures and out in the jungles and places, and we find little graves about this long, this maybe 2 or 3 or 4, you stop and you wonder, what happened to these kids, these babies? Where are their families? What happened to them? Most of the cases we don't know, okay? Was there some plague, some disease or something? Don't know. And down Waterloo on County Road 1, there's about 15 of these graves like this, okay? Presbyterian church down there. So we don't know, okay? What is a cemetery? What crazy old man, don't you know? It's a place where you put people in the ground. Well, place designated area of land where the remains of deceased individuals are buried. It's a space set aside for remembrance and memorialization, where individuals can be interred and honored. It is believed the term cemetery originates from the Greek, meaning a sleeping place. Okay? I mean, most of these things people never think about, but for some reason I do. Okay. Cemeteries are thought to have come about in the 7th century, okay, where burials were controlled by the church in Europe. Types of cemeteries. It's a cemetery. Well, there's more than that. Public cemeteries. Many cemeteries are public cemeteries. Many. Okay. Private cemeteries, individuals or businesses, are not open to public general burials. Okay. Veterans government graves. Now here's one. Columbarium. Have you ever heard that term? Lee knows what it is. Cousin Edgar knows what it means. Anybody want to take a guess? I've given you an answer right here. Okay. You know what a post office box is? Well, that's where there's 4 places I know of there, columbariums, and these churches I've listed right here. Okay. The cremains, or the cremated remains of a person, you can insert them into this little box. It's sealed, okay, forever, and they can be removed if family wants them removed. That's what they are. Natural or green cemeteries means no embalming, no liners, no vaults, using biodegradable containers, gaskets, shrouds, or nothing at all. There are some of those, okay? Religious cemeteries reserved for members of a specific religious community, and the cemetery is often owned or operated and managed by a church. That's not uncommon. Okay. Which direction? This one that we see every day. Sometime now it's all directions. Does it make any difference? Okay. If they face north, south, east, or west? Yes and no, but not for the living, really. It's the Christian convention that the head faces east. And you guys know what that means, okay? But we see them east, west, north, and south when you're out and see so many cemeteries, okay? Do they face east or west? It's a big deal. It can be a big deal if you're surveying, you documented everything, okay? Especially for genealogy's sake. The fact determines when a man is on the right or left. Many cemeteries have stones facing both ways, and they do, okay? There's a cemetery up near Green Hill, between Kill and Green Hill, Hill Cemetery, big cemetery. When I surveyed that one last year, I just almost gave up. I put them gravestones in rows, okay, sequence them, okay. I walk through the cemetery first, trying to get a feel for the layout. How am I going to identify this row and this row? That cemetery, they cross, they got short rows, they intermingle, they go curves, all kinds of different directions. But I did it anyway. So right here's what can happen. See? Left, right, north, south, east, and west. And it can be a problem for the person engraving the stones. Okay? You can be engraved in the wrong position. Okay? I see this too. Okay? You learn a lot of things in cemeteries, and people say, really? Yeah, you can, if you're interested in it. Okay? Can I bury someone on my own property? Why are folks doing this? Anybody want to take a guess? Cost is one of the big reasons. Okay? And I've been asked recently about, can I bury someone on my own property? And generally, the answer is yes, you can. Okay? There's no federal law in the United States that says no or governs it. It's left up to the states. Okay? As I mentioned right here, There's California, Indiana, and Washington prohibit it. They don't allow it at all on your own property. There are 2 in Lauderdale County that I know of. Now, I'm not going to tell you where they are because I don't want you shouldn't be going out there looking around. Okay? Here's one that actually happened in Stevenson, Alabama. Stevenson is northeast Alabama. If you're going to Chattanooga on the Oval Highway, you're going to go to Stevenson. Okay? They buried a man, buried his wife in the yard without local approval. Now, you can bury on your own property, but you're still supposed to get funeral director, licensed funeral director, get his permission or notify him. Now, the local funeral director, he can't prohibit you, but there's some maybe inspections that you need to do. Now, you bury a guy on your own or a person on your own property to get a death certificate. That funeral director, licensed director, is supposed to sign off on it. If he doesn't sign off on it, if it's on your own property, you most likely are not going to get a death certificate. Okay, but that's why you need that. But you can do it. Yeah. This one, embalmment is not required. Consider following the advice of your funeral director, especially for having open casket view. There's a lot of other things go away. There's 30 pages of rules and requirements for the Alabama Funeral Home Directors Association that they got to do. Okay, but you can do it. Types of gravestones, many types. Okay, slate. There's some dates there that they were, or the people know that in the stone business know that they started and still used until 1900. Shale, quarried in Vermont, New York, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and probably some other places. Sandstone, brownstone, sedimentary rock, compressed sand, light tan. Largest quarry is in Lorain, Ohio for those. C, marble limestone, color is white. Largest underground quarry is in the world is in Vermont for marble and limestone. Okay. Granite, same situation there. Blue granite is quarried in Vermont. Fieldstones, there are lots of them in the older cemetery. You see many, many fieldstones. Before sources of gravestones were available in the area or lack of stone, carving skills required, or just family didn't have the resources. Fieldstone. Okay. My great-grandfather was this Methodist circuit rider pastor up around the state line, Cypress Inn. He would actually cut and make gravestones. Okay. There's still some in use up there today, but he did that. What is the normal size of a grave? Anybody want to comment on that? 6 feet under? That's a term that originated hundreds of years ago. Typical, 8 foot long, 6'5", 4 feet deep, individual stone. Today, they're not 6 feet deep. Rarely will they dig a grave 6 feet deep. The more likely, 4 feet deep, depending on the vault or whatever you have to go with it. And one person I observed, a nice man, was out at Jacksonburg. Anybody from Jacksonburg in here? Area? Okay. Man was out there digging a grave. I said, "You gonna make it 5 foot, 6 feet?" He said, "No, we don't do that anymore. It's about 4 feet." Okay. Why 6 feet under? 6 feet under rule buried may have come from the plague in London in 1665. As far as documentation can be determined. Lord Mayor of London ordered that all graves should be at least 6 feet deep. That's where that term came from, 6 feet under. It didn't come from the United States. Okay. That long ago. No federal laws mandate that the use of vaults. However, some states and cemeteries have regulations requiring them. Okay. So it's not as hard, in fact, and strict as you might think. Yeah. Okay. Typically 4 feet wide. No. Okay. No federal laws. We saw that one. Quarries in Alabama right here. There's several in Alabama here. Some of them are still active, not many. So our great state provides a lot of stone materials. Okay. Right of access. Now I'd like to spend some time on this one. Have you ever been out in the boondocks and out in the fields and cotton fields, corn fields, and want to go visit a graveyard, cemetery rather? Can you go? People tell me, well, it's on private property. Well, that's okay. This right here is very, very important. Landowners will have a duty to allow ingress and egress. Now, the Alabama statutes and Tennessee are almost identical. Tennessee's are just a little more disrubricated, just a little bit, but the same words are there. Okay? Permitted visitors can go there. friends, descendants, the burial plot, researchers, owners. Okay. Purpose of access is limited to visiting graves, maintaining the cemetery, grave sites, or conducting research. Here's some restrictions owners can use. They can specify the frequency, hours, duration, and route of access provided. Can they prevent you from going there? No. Yes and no. The law states that the property owners have to allow, the key words are ingress and egress. That means in and out. And if there's no other old trail or wagon road or anywhere leading into the cemeteries that's 100 years old or longer, older, they got to allow it. People say, well, that's private property. That's okay. All land is private.
But they don't own the cemetery, they own the land around.
You're exactly right. Who owns, let's continue with that. Who owns that grave plot? Anybody want to? I know you know. Go back to sleep. Yeah. Anybody else? Talking about Edgar. Yeah. Who owns the property? The person that's buried in that grave and his descendants. You're not going to have any ancestors, most likely, that's still around. And his descendants, they own that plot. Unless the commercial cemeteries, that might change some. But the person in that plot owns it and his descendants, his or her descendants. That's who owns it. Now, going back to, it's privately owned. Well, the land around it is. It can be. It's privately owned if the federal government doesn't own it. They own a lot of BLM land, especially in the West and Midwest. Or state, local, city, county entity owns it. All of it's privately owned. Somebody owns all the land. There's none just hanging out there. Okay. I've had to tell two people this. You can't keep me out. Now, we always tried to not even say anything about the statutes, okay? One in Cypress Inn and another one in Center Star. I was trying to find 4 brown cemeteries. I knew where 3 of them was. I went to it. And the 4th one, after about 2 days, I located it, okay? It's near the river. So I went to this person's home, knocked on the door, came. He was very nice, and I was on my best behavior for a chance. And so we talked, and I told him why I wanted to find the cemeteries. And I said, is it on your property? He said, yes. I said, so I had a name. I said, is this person buried there? And he said, yes. I said, well, I like to go visit the gravesite, document it, just check it, you know, for vandalism and make sure it's okay. He says, I don't want you to go there. And I said, why? He couldn't tell me why. He said, my grandfather built this road right through here. I said, well, that's great. I'm glad to know that. Had nothing to do with the cemetery. So he said, you just can't go. I said, okay. I said, now, I'll be back. So about 2 days later, I think I went back. No, I didn't have to go back. I went down to, I didn't tell him that you can't deny me access. I didn't tell him that because it's not a good thing to do. We try to be reasonable, okay? So I went down to the sheriff's office. So they assigned a detective to talk to me. And then I said, this is a situation. He said, wow, never had this to happen before. I don't know anything about it. So I gave him a copy of the state statutes to read. He read. He looked at me and he read again and looked at me. He said, they can't keep you out, can they? I said, no, I know that. But he didn't know. Now they know. And he said, are you going to go back again? I said, I am going back. He said, well, go back again whenever you go. If he denies you access, just go back to your car and call. Call 911, tell them it's a non-emergency and to contact me. He said, we'll be right out. Well, the next day I learned that, well, actually, when I was talking to the property owner, I said, is there another access on the back side of your property? He said, no. I said, who owns the land? Well, they don't want you in there. So that was okay. So I thanked him and went about my business. So I found out who the property owner was on the back side of his property that we could cross and go to the little cemetery. So happened to belong to 2 lawyers, 2 attorneys in town. Okay. And they said, one of them I talked to, he said, very nice. He said, well, I don't want you down there in my beans. driving through the field. I said, if we went, we'd walk through the field, we'd drive down through there. He said, tell you what, when they harvest the beans, you call me, or I'll call you, and then we'll go. And he did that, so we went. So we didn't have to go back to the homeowner that didn't want me to cross his property, okay? But, so we just crossed the field from where the attorney's side, their property, and went right to the little cemetery, okay? So they cannot deny you access. Again, we don't want to tell people this, okay? Because, when you're out there alone somewhere, you don't know what they're going to do, how they're going to respond. But they can't
Trying
deny
to find
access.
them home sometimes, you drive 20 miles out of the country, and they're never there.
That happens.
We finally got one guy, and we was able to get in there, and he was real nice about it. There's a couple of trips out there to do that.
Yeah.
That's why our Lauderdale County group, we always put the sign on Dr. Mikowski's car so they know we're officially from the county. So if they want to do something,
They can
take it up with the county.
They can get him.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have to outrun the homeowner.
That's right.
Just Dr. Mikowski.
Yeah. So we had that happen in Cypress Inn. In fact, we were looking for the old Darby Cemetery number 221, and this gentleman knows all about that cemetery. There's an old shoulder buried there, War of 1812, Mr. William. We have looked for that old cemetery for 4 years now. West side of the trace, near the state line, okay? But we can't find it. And I think you had, decades ago, communicated with his descendants in East Texas. And they said, there's a gravestone there, but they haven't been there, so they can't tell us where to go. But we're still looking for that gravestone. We want to find that old soldier's grave really bad before we get old. Okay.
And what was his name again?
Blassingame.
Blassingame. William Blassingame. William Blassingame. Yeah. And I several months ago, I went through all the Blassingame lists I could find in this county and Colbert County and called them, emailed them. One or two of them knew of this cemetery, but that's all they knew. Anyway, they can't deny you access, but be nice. Could be some of that stuff growing out there. A green stuff.
Ruin out there.
Yeah. Okay. As we talked about, cemeteries in Lauderdale County, maybe 425. But Lee, we may have to revise that downward because I've been to 378. And that's all big, little, small, large, everywhere we can find them. And I've been to some that I didn't know about that people told me about, okay? There's a grave way over here or two. And they were correct. So there's one north of Cinder Hill, north of side of Highway 64, two south of Rogersville near the water. There's a Washington grave. You can't find those two, okay? And there's one at Waterloo. It's off Hitchcock Lane, I believe. And the guy that told me about it says, you guys will have to get in the boat and go around the water and get to it. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not getting in the boat. So that's where I am right now. That includes about 35 unknowns. I categorize them unknowns, okay, when we just can't find the name of the cemetery or whose property they're on. And some of these people are absent from the area. You don't know where they are. I've contacted people in Colorado, up at Center Star, there's one up there. Let this lady know as going to the cemetery. Sometimes you just don't know, okay?
Now, if it's got just one grave,
yeah,
or a grave of a farmer and his wife, that's considered a cemetery.
yeah.
So that's the 425. That could be all singles.
It could be, yeah.
And that
Yeah,
was
something, you go ahead, sir.
That was Billy Sledge's estimate of his. He was a local historian who died 5 or 6 years ago. So that was his. He compiled a list of 425. He was with our county group. So, we might or might not have to tweak that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, please, if you know of any old grave sites out there, let me know. We need to go find them, okay? I don't care where they are. Let us know, okay? Yeah, John Robinson is one now. The last person I know of that found that one were 1995.
If there are no gravestones, how do you know it's a grave?
Well, there's ways to tell it. That's a good question. Anybody want to comment on it?
Something to use. sunken in area.
Depressions,
Longer than it is wide, faces.
that's right. And me and my buddy Dave Ponder from church, we go out and people say, well, I know there's graves there. In fact, you mentioned one, the Long Cemetery. When no other signs are there, sometimes you feel like there's graves there. There's one sign that's never failed us. You know what periwinkles are? There's different species of that. When there's no marker tree, there's no 200-year-old tree, oak or cedar tree there, okay? We've always found a periwinkle. The little tiny ones, the leaves are kind of oily looking. Those have always proven to be correct.
You can get probing rods too, that depending on how far down the rod goes into the ground.
Yeah.
We use those with.
Now, this is me, my explanation of that. That periwinkle, I think that's a God-given sign. It has never failed us. Then when we poke around, clean around, we've found those graves, markers or field stones. Yeah, no boat right here on this one, number 3. I'm not getting the boat. Herman Cemetery, Center Star, know where it is. Nolan England is on his property that joins his, and I talked to him a couple weeks ago again. We were going to do it 2 years ago in July. We did do one up there. He said, yeah, we need to go do that one. And we are. It's hot, but we don't care. We're going anyway. But he's busy. Okay, from Oakland to Waterloo, there are maybe 35 cemeteries, and people say, I don't believe that. I said, well, that's what we say it is. We've documented at least that many. Okay, they're everywhere. You know, now I can look to my left and almost say, well, I'm almost a century old. The people that were here 200 years ago, where are they buried? Here, 500 years ago, where are they buried? They're everywhere. You're walking on them. Some at Waterloo. I found them in people's backyards. They said, what? Yeah, come on, I'll show you. Especially around the state line. Edgar knows.
I know one guy that built the garage on top of part of the cemetery, so that some people are under his garage.
That's the one out
Near my parents.
Cypress Mill, Sharps Mill Road back in there. Yeah. This Lauderdale County, I kind of broke them down by areas. Okay. Western area from the Trace west to Waterloo to the water, there's about 41, I believe. And these numbers add up to my 478. Mid-central area, Natchez Trace east to US 43, about 158. Eastern, 43 over to Elk River, 144. Unknown all areas, 35. There are others. They're everywhere. You don't know about them. You know, the fence that were there, the old rail fences, sometimes we find 2 or 3 old barbed wire fences are covered with vines and under the ground and dirt. They're just everywhere. Okay. Several cemeteries I won't survey, and why? Well known, easily accessed by vehicles such as Wesley's Chapel, where my mom and dad are buried. Antioch, Blue Water, Gabe Butler, 900 graves at Gabe Butler. Civitan, there's about 1,200. Easy access, Rogersville, you drive right up to them. North Carolina, the 900 graves there, Richardson Chapel. There's about 1,200 of that one. It's, you know where that is. It's between north of Killen, south of Lexington, in that area, to the right, to the east. Okay. So those are easy to find. They're good. Now, someday if I'm feeling well, like Gabe Butler, it's hot weather, I might work an hour and come home and visit my wife if she got any good food to eat for lunch. Okay? So I'd have to take about three trips. The largest one I've done was 1,334 graves, were Wayne County Railroad Church. You know where Railroad is? Some of you do. If any old people in here, you should know that. Okay. Go Chisholm Road North, state line, on the right up there, and when the road 227 turn goes to Iron City, that big church right there. 1,334 graves, and I went to every single one of them. I made 5 trips up there to make sure I didn't miss anybody. There's been some burial since then. Come on. Miscellaneous stuff right here. Things came in my mind. Lauderdale County, there's a cemetery that was identified by the U.S. government. Did you know that? I retyped this from a newspaper article, and Lee may have given it. I don't remember where it came from.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah. Okay, it's probably not generally known that the United States has a graveyard. Now, I would call it a cemetery, but it's a graveyard in Lauderdale County. The sacred spot consists of 1 acre, lies in the Cloverdale Beach. It's northeast of Cloverdale, okay? And it embraced was what is known as the Littleton Graveyard. The spot was reserved by the government because there was interred many years ago the body of Charles Littleton, soldier of the Revolutionary War, okay? The soldier was a lieutenant in the service, and his descendants now have in their possession his powder horn, his epaulets, and his knee buckles. Our townsman, Mr. S.L. Littleton, is a grandson of the soldier, and his grandchildren have erected a slab over his grave to protect it. That's about 4 miles northeast of Cloverdale. We've cleaned that cemetery twice. When we first went there, you couldn't even walk out there. So bad. So at one time, there were 7 of us. We finally reached the number 7 that old guys would go get together and go clean. We went up there about 3 times. We cut and hacked our way in. So we cut a safe access to the old soldier's grave, okay? Then we went up and put a gate up there. But he's there, okay? There's his marker, and that's a DAR marker. Now, I don't remember, Edgar, you may know. There's something about the dates either on his marker or the DAR marker that don't agree. And I can't remember exactly what that is. We kind of stumbled into that. But he's there. The U.S. government identified that spot. And also, there's another thing I want to mention. Okay. Charles Littleton Cemetery, northeast of Cloverdale on County Road 127. It's back off about 127, about 300 yards out there. Has a fence around it and some cedar trees, okay? That's the DAR marker. You know what DAR is? Most of you? Okay.
What's it, the American Revolution?
Daughters of American Revolution, yes. Big organization. In fact, a lady contacted me 2 weeks ago about another old soldier buried. His family's buried about 1 mile south of Cloverdale, out in the field. Casey Cemetery. Edgar knows about it. Lee knows about it. His wife is buried there. Now, General John Casey himself is buried at Arlington Cemetery in D.C. area up there. But they said that she's entitled to a DAR marker because whatever she did in the war. And Lee. Yeah. So I took them out there, and they were just happy. And now we're trying to get written permission from the landowner around it, although I know the landowner that we've been across his field to go to the cemetery, and he's very, very nice. But they have to have written permission from the landowner. So we're working on that. The Stoltz brothers at Iron City owns it. They just bought it. Okay, some more miscellaneous stuff. There's no one in the room. I don't know this lady, but she's public domain. Okay. Grave dousing. You ever heard of grave dousing? Some of you have. Anybody ever tried it? Done it? There's one. Was you successful? You do it? Yeah. What people don't know, it's been around for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. The same thing as wishing for water. Now, most people can do it with practice, but you got to practice, okay, to be good at it. I'm not good at it. When I do it, I'll tell you this. How we do on time? Oh, we got a lot of time left. So one time I was up at Mount Pleasant Cemetery at the state line. That's where my Smith ancestors are buried. My great-grandfather, our great-grandfather, parents are buried there. Well, there's one, James L. Smith. We cannot find his grave. He was sheriff of Wayne County, 1832 to 1834. He had no reason to go anyplace else because his sons and family buried there. We have a cousin in San Diego. She was a retired probate attorney. She's been working on that 10 years. We just can't find it. I believe he is in that cemetery, Mount Pleasant Cemetery. In fact, I've recorded, I put a piece of paper there to identify it. I did a grid, so anybody 50 years from now can go find it for that. I just believe he's there yet. He had no reason to go anywhere. People said, no, he's in Savannah and Hardin County. I go down and look around the cemetery. He's not there. Nobody in the family is there. Okay? No reason for him to go there. He had a sawmill up there on Whiskey Road, I think it's called, near Lawrenceburg. But anyway, he's there. But what I was looking around one day, I had my dowsing rods, and I walked all around to the cemetery trying to kind of clear my mind. I know my wife would probably say his mind can't be cleared. So to get my thoughts out But the things I was thinking about, get them out of my mind. I said, James L. Smith, are you in this cemetery? Are you buried here? So I did that about twice. Walked around. Got it. Well, I think he may be buried. But almost anybody can do that. But you got to practice it. The wind affects it. If the wind blowing, you're wasting your time. There's people that are good at it. The lady in Missouri, she kind of developed this about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer. I found her website, and she's very, very good at it. She gets calls from around the country to come and find this grave for us. She can tell you, and there's maybe you guys can, the sex of that person, the deceased person, and the grave and the length and all that. Okay, it can be done. In fact, she was called somewhere in Texas once a few years ago. They wanted the local authority was going to exhume a body, and they weren't sure which body they would need to dig up. They called her down to find the body, which she did. They knew where the grave was. She told them where it was, if it was male or female, and said, you can dig. Now, she had no other information to work with, so she couldn't really cheat. They dug her up, dug this person up, and sure enough, exactly like she said it was. And so they were convinced, but they wanted to prove it's male or female or something. I don't know if it's involved with a crime or something, but it was true. Okay. Anybody ever hear of Chief Doublehead? You have? Anybody? You related to him? Are you related to the chief? Okay. Where's his buried? Where's he buried? His gravesite. Anybody know? One guy that was going to take me there one day, he said, okay, yeah, we can go and take it. And then the next day he contacted us, no, I can't. They don't want anybody else coming up there that's non-family. Well, I went, knocked on the door, and not going to tell you where. And this lady says, yeah. And her son was there. I told him who I was, and I just wanted to say, if there's a grave there, do you think it's Doublehead? So he took me, his mother said, yeah, take him on out there, back to their house. So he said, I said, why do you think this may be Doublehead's grave? And he said, this is what our dad, who had passed away about a year before, had been passed down to him, and his dad, and to his dad. He said, that's where it comes from. So his dad put a marker right here, okay, and it had a tag that said Doublehead's grave. I don't know if it is or not. Lee, probably you want to.
Yeah, it's as good as anywhere else.
Yeah. Said, was our dad, his dad, and his dad said that's where it was. Don't know.
Really, no one really knows.
Nobody
There's
knows for
2 or
sure.
3 spots.
But there are 3 graves there.
Yeah.
And so I thanked him and went about my business. Okay. What else can we learn? Here's a good one. Hurricane Cemetery. Anybody been to Hurricane Cemetery? You have? Okay. You ever hear of this guy right here? You have.
I researched that story.
Yeah. Well, I was up there one day in the area, I don't know, a year and a half ago, and it was hot, and I was looking for something, and went to the Hurricane Cemetery, and there was a couple of guys there, and I told them who I was, and I was looking for another old cemetery, and I found it. But then he said, did you ever hear the story about this man? I said, no. So I'm interested because it's hot outside, and we were inside the church, and it was nice and cool. There's only 3 of us in there. And he says, Frank Jesse James. Y'all, all of you heard about that. Yeah, they're real people. You know, allegedly they hung out around Anderson, 1860 something, hiding. You know, they weren't there just vacationing.
Well, they robbed the paymaster on the Muscle Shoals Canal in 1881.
Okay, that's why you got the job. Yeah, you're good. He's got answers for you. He's accurate. But anyway, it seems that where they were hanging out in a cave or wherever they were hanging out, there was a house nearby. And I guess there was a nice looking lady that lived there, young lady. Well, this lady and apparently Frank, Jesse, they got together. Well, a child was born. This man allegedly is Jesse James's son. Now, there's more to the story. And they told me the story. I don't remember if this gentleman that came up there looking talked to him specifically, personally or not. This man from Texas came to the area a few years ago. I don't know how many, maybe a decade ago. He knew he was looking for this name right here. For some reason, he knew about Anderson area. So they said, do you know where this person's buried? They said, yes, they're right here in Hurricane Cemetery. He said, this man says, Richard Davis was my dad. Now, the guy that's searching for him is from Texas. He said, Richard Davis is my dad. And Richard's dad was Jesse James. That's all I know. So it's there, easy to find. You know, you want to take the afternoon, go up there sometime, go. It's hot there now. But two brothers told me this up there in the church. Okay. So everybody visit other counties. I've been asked to visit Albert, Franklin, Lawrence, some others, and I said no. I said, well, why not? I said, we're trying to finish Lauderdale before we die. You know, there's a lot of work out there in Lauderdale County. Now I'm slowing down, so I've got to go back, start going back with James Dixon more in Waynesburg, the courthouse. That's why we don't do that. I thought we could finish the end of last year, but it didn't happen. Didn't work out. Keep finding old graves. Okay. Some of the most interesting finds that we have, some beautiful, beautiful gravestones. Kernahan came from Ireland in, was it 1799 to Philadelphia, PA. Why they ended up in Oakland area, who knows? But they did. He had a big plantation there. But I met one day at a shop, me and another friend of one of the big farmers in Bend of the River down there. And he said, I knew of that name, that cemetery, but nobody could tell us how to get there. He said, yeah, I'll tell you how to get there. And he did. But now if you go there, you're not going to find it unless somebody takes you there. If you have to walk in, it's 0.9 miles from Gonford Road. But we found a shortcut. Okay. We went, a friend had a brand new mule, you know, a cart. He said, come on. We got his mule and we got through the pastures over there, across the pipeline, and we found it. It is a beautiful cemetery. It's a gem. These monuments, I'm 6, they're 8 and about 9 foot tall. Now, some of these, that's the biggest one there. How much do you think they weigh? 10 tons? They're huge. They didn't come from Lauderdale County or Cloverdale. They came from the northeast and shipped down the river by rail or boat and to the nearest port or railroad head. How'd they get them to Oakland? Bug carts, wagons, muscles, ropes, mules. That's how they got them here. Some of them, you can't see it. The carving on it is so detailed and intricate, you just want to mesmerize. It's there. You just want to keep looking at it. They're beautiful. We decided to do some cleaning there. This wall was tumbling down in some places. There are blocks of limestone, about this size. This would be like two blocks. We started working. There are actually trees growing up inside that, about 10, 12-inch trees. That's how long it's been since been any cleaning there. Okay. So we worked. That's where a block almost fell on me one day and bruised my leg. Because they were cutting the tree, and I'm looking at that tree, and I said, that tree's about to fall. And they said, yeah. I looked, and I said, it's going to fall on my leg. Yeah, it did. But I moved. I was about 2 seconds too late, but it got my leg, but I'm okay. But we went back about 3 or 4 times to the cemetery. You go down Gonford Road, County Road 4, you go north, you go to the second metal gate and go around that field, round, and then you go over and down. There's a pipeline crosses, and it's about 20 yards west of the pipeline. It's worth seeing, but somebody would have to take you, okay? Property owners are very welcoming, they don't care. But that is a very, very nice cemetery. That's Kernahan. One day we were looking for these cemeteries and went to Miss Ellen Walker's home down Gonford Road, Bend of the River. She said yes, and she was probably then 80-something years old. Nice lady. She said, we call it Cunningham, spelled with a K. It's Kernahan, is what it is, okay. Coger Cemetery, Coger Plantation, okay, County Road 189 down there, near the river. We went down and we were trying to find the Coger Cemetery. We found the landowner. He said, yeah, it's over there somewhere. I said, well, how far? Well, it's way over there in the bushes. He said, it's going to be hard to get to. Well, he was right. We cut our way into there. We couldn't find it, so we cut our way through there. We cut a path about 8 foot wide, about 100 yards long, and we found it. We went down there and worked and cleaned and worked and cleaned several times. Got it. It was safe, and we cleaned what we could. But this been vandalized and it's so bad condition. You'd have to have heavy equipment and go down and reset everything. So we had to stop. But it's very interesting. Okay. There's another one. That's it. But that's how it looked like to the cemetery right there. After we cut our way through there, it's easy to find. The Coger Plantation there. The person that owns it now is who is it? BC Cold Iron. Oh geez, yeah. I'm just getting started. Okay. Yeah, Cliff Cold Iron. He lives there. He's living in the barn now that Nancy O'Neill built because she was going to rehab it, her and her sister-in-law, and they said there's too much of a project anyway. Right there, some of the super senior guys. When we had everybody working, okay, that's at the Coger Cemetery right there. We worked for 15 minutes and take an hour break, okay. Now this right here, we talked about Mr. the old soldier, what was his name? Charles Littleton. Now, one of my friends that lives near there said there's a pulpit in the church that the old soldier hand carved himself. He said, "You want to go there?" I said, "Yeah." So we got in this truck and we went to Bethel Grove Cemetery, where it is, 4 miles northeast of Cloverdale. Mr. Littleton, the old soldier, carved that when he was probably 70 years old. It is beautiful, very beautiful. Now the church has had it refinished a little bit, a couple of times, but that makes you just want to gaze at it, just stare at it. But he hand carved that, the old soldier did. Okay. Casey Cemetery. Took the Dar ladies there 2 weeks ago, about a mile south of Cloverdale, in the woods, way in the woods, about a half mile into the woods. That's what John Peters Cemetery looked like. We finally restored that. We talked to the property owners, Ms. Walker, and we're going to work on that. We worked on that several times. That's down on Goldenford Road. You turn right, you know where to look. You can see it from the highway. Lee knows where it is. Probably some of you. This one bothers me a lot. Price Cemetery, James Bradley Price Cemetery. If you're facing like the end of the mall where J.C. Penney was, this is about 2 blocks over. It's in horrible condition, and people don't care. About 2 years ago, I talked with Milton Hearn about it. He told me who owned it. They're absentee owners. He said, hadn't seen them and heard from them in many years. He said, if you want to clean it, go clean it. He said, if anybody give you a hard time, you tell them Uncle Milton is going to talk to them. So it is a mess. It's right, the neighbors over here, here's part of the old trailer park over here. They just took trash. They still do it, trash and trash. It's horrible condition.
It's under the aegis of the City Historical Commission. So they're supposed to look after all the city cemeteries. They just don't have the funds to do a whole lot.
Yeah. I went and talked to Frank Townley, who's the section for the Florence City Cemetery. He said, I know what you're talking about. He said, I would gladly clean it, but they won't let me. It's not city property. He said, they won't allow me to do it. It's shameful condition to let a cemetery get in that. It's ugly. Reminders, surveys. Yeah, you need to look at this. When you transcribe a cemetery or survey it, okay, don't alphabetize your listing. Why is that? Well, I do it both ways. Because by having these in order, they may be able to tell the family groups, this family, this family, this family, this is part of this family, okay? Do not make any additions to it, to your surveys. Because I know you may say, well, this is Joe's brother John. Well, you may be correct, but that's not what's on the gravestone. I record only what's on the gravestone to be accurate as I can. I'll go back 50 miles and try to correct something, but just don't do it. Here's one I got to tell you about. You know where this is? Blue Cemetery, before you get to the dam on 101 South, down there. I was down there one day doing a survey and I happened to look down and I saw this. This got my attention. Who is this lady, this girl? Young red-haired girl died on the riverboat. So is the old man too. And I talked with people that knew people that lived in the area 50, 75 years ago. Nobody knows.
Where was this at?
It's at the Happy Valley Cemetery. You go down 101, like you go into the dam, you turn left down in there. And this down in there at that cemetery.
Bob Stanfield wrote an article on that 25 years ago. He researched those. I just don't remember the details.
Yeah, and I've had people, yes.
Riverboat rode up, and there were two of them that came with brought ashore.
Yeah, it was around Saltillo in Wayne County, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was the city of Florence, I think.
Well, and
There's an article on it where he documented those guys. I just don't
yeah,
remember the-
they don't know what happened, why she died, or why he died. Okay, maybe the article, because we looked, and some other guys in the area have been trying to find out more about it. Okay, but this is kind of a sad situation to me. I know you want me to finish, don't you?
Yeah, we've got another group that needs to bring, unfortunately.
Okay, I'll just stop there then. Questions, please.